Hey everyone, how's it going? Today we're diving deep into Hotel Architect, that construction simulator that just left early access and hit version 1.0. If you've spent hours designing rooms, adjusting rates, and trying to keep guests happy, you know the game has many layers hidden beneath its simple appearance. With that in mind, I've selected 10 advanced tips that make all the difference between a mediocre hotel and a true hospitality empire. Let's get into it. I'm Mary, and the video starts right now. One of the things that hits hardest in Hotel Architect and isn't explicitly pointed out early on is how real-time construction directly impacts the guest experience. And look, this is the kind of detail that separates okay management from a truly highly rated hotel. Because it doesn't matter if you have a beautiful layout if in the middle of the afternoon there's construction noise in the hallway while people are trying to rest. I realized this in practice when I started doing renovations during the day, thinking I was being efficient. The result? Irritated guests, ratings plummeting, and that classic domino effect. Less money coming in and more difficulty growing. The game simulates this discomfort very well, so any noise or structural change at the wrong time carries significant weight. The turning point happens when you start treating construction as a strategic process. Scheduling major changes for the night or for times when the hotel is emptier makes all the difference. It's not just about avoiding complaints. It's about keeping operations running smoothly while improving the space. It's almost like playing two games at once, guest management and construction management. This is a tip I consider advanced because it requires planning and patience. You trade haste for consistency in ratings. And when you get into that rhythm, the game flows much better. Your hotel grows more stably and you avoid that chaos of trying to fix your reputation after things have already gone south. At first, it's natural to want to build everything with walls, separating each environment like a closed puzzle. But when you truly discover the zone system, it feels like the game opens up new possibilities in front of you. I personally took a while to trust it, but when I started using zones instead of putting up walls for everything, the layout became much more fluid and functional. You can create spacious lobbies, integrated restaurants, and common areas that make much more sense, all without those bunch of partitions that just hinder circulation and visibility. And the most interesting part is how this even impacts creativity. You start thinking of the hotel more as a living space than a collection of separate rooms. Want to make a lounge area with a bar and waiting area combined? It works. Want a more open restaurant connected to other spaces? That works too. Zones give you that freedom without breaking the game's logic. Now, when you get into suites, it gets even smarter. Instead of trying to set up complicated structures, you just connect rooms with internal doors and there you go, a functional suite without the headache. It's a simple solution, but it shows how well understanding the system puts you several steps ahead in hotel management. This is one of those tips that really hits home once the chaos has already started. In Hotel Architect, it's pointless to have a beautiful, crowded restaurant if the kitchen can't keep up with the pace. And the critical point here is the supply chain, inventory, space, and preparation capacity. If that's not well adjusted, everything grinds to a halt. I felt this firsthand when my restaurant started filling up and suddenly the waiters simply had nothing to serve. It wasn't a lack of staff, it was a lack of infrastructure. Small kitchen, little storage, and ingredients running out mid-service. The result was lines, angry clients, and that drop in ratings that comes without warning. The game makes it very clear that a restaurant isn't just decoration and layout, it's heavy operations. Investing in larger shelves and better refrigerators makes an absurd difference, especially when you start receiving more guests. It's the type of upgrade that seems secondary, but in practice, it sustains the entire functioning of the place. Once you understand this, you completely change how you plan. You start anticipating demand, preparing the kitchen for the worst-case scenario, and ensuring you never run out of ingredients during critical moments. And when everything is properly adjusted, the restaurant flows. Dishes come out fast, guests are satisfied, and you turn a potential bottleneck into one of the most profitable areas of the hotel. When you start setting up multiple rooms, doing everything manually becomes a slow and somewhat tiring process. That's where the mirror and dropper tools become almost mandatory. The M shortcut to mirror was a game changer for me. You set up a room perfectly, well optimized, and then you can replicate it perfectly just by inverting the layout. This not only speeds up construction absurdly, but it also maintains a consistent visual standard throughout the entire hotel, which helps a lot with general organization. The dropper, on the other hand, seems simple, but saves a ton of time. Instead of navigating through menus trying to find exactly that floor or wallpaper you used before, you just click and reuse. When you're decorating several rooms or adjusting fine details, this makes everything much more fluid. In the end, these tools change the game's pace. You stop spending energy on repetitive tasks and start focusing more on strategic decisions and the design of the hotel as a whole. It's the type of optimization that, once you get used to it, makes it impossible to play without. This is one of those mechanics that many people ignore at first, but which make an absurd difference in the medium term. In Hotel Architect, it's not just about hiring someone to fill a role. Staff personality traits really impact how the work is done day to day. I took a while to pay attention to this, and I ended up filling my hotel with okay staff, but nothing more. It worked, but there was always something out of place. Mediocre cleaning, slow maintenance, small problems piling up. When I started investing in people with better traits, like the perfectionist, the difference was very clear. The perfectionist isn't just a small bonus, it changes the quality standard of the service. These employees tend to do everything better and also level up faster over time. In other words, that higher initial cost ends up paying for itself because you reduce errors, improve the guest experience, and need to fix fewer problems later. Once you get into this habit, hiring stops being an automatic decision and becomes almost a curation process. You start building a truly efficient team instead of just a sufficient one. And this, in the long run, makes your hotel much more stable and much easier to manage without the headache. If there's one thing that completely changes the pace of your construction, it's where you decide to put the material truck. At first, it's very easy to ignore this and just focus on the hotel layout. But after a few larger builds, it becomes very clear that logistics matter more than they seem. It's no use having a beautiful project if your workers spend half the time walking back and forth. The game doesn't make this obvious right away, but the builders literally lose a lot of time just going to get materials. And when you start noticing this, it's even somewhat frustrating to see a bunch of people standing still or walking while the work could be progressing. This wasted time adds up, especially in larger projects, and suddenly a build that should be fast starts to drag on. Therefore, positioning the delivery truck or storage areas as close as possible to the construction site makes a massive difference. It's not just a silly little optimization, it's something that directly impacts real-time construction speed. When materials are right there, the builders barely stop, the flow is constant, and the work progresses much more efficiently. Once you start applying this consistently, the game essentially changes its rhythm. Your expansions become faster, you can test layouts with more freedom, and most importantly, you avoid that annoying bottleneck that halts your progress. It's one of those simple tips that, once you understand it, basically becomes a basic rule for playing well. Guests aren't as mysterious as they seem. The game literally shows you what they want. You just need to stop for a second and look. I have personally made the mistake of changing layouts and adding random things to the room, trying to improve the rating without knowing exactly what the problem was. But when you start clicking on the rooms and hovering over the guests, everything becomes clear. The game hands you the answer if the room is too small, if a comfort is missing, or if something is bothering them. This completely changes how you play because you stop wasting money and time on the wrong solutions. Instead of doing generic upgrades, you solve exactly what is affecting that specific guest. It's a much more surgical approach, and the results come much faster. This tool is basically an optimization radar. If you use it frequently, your decisions become much more precise and your ratings start to rise consistently. It's that type of simple detail, but one that takes your management to another level.
The type of bed you place practically defines who can occupy that room. It's not just aesthetic, it's a game rule. When I started paying attention to this, I realized I was limiting my own hotel unintentionally. I had spare rooms, but I still couldn't accommodate certain guests simply because the configuration didn't allow it. It was like having space available, but not having the right key for that type of client. From there, I started setting up rooms with a clearer intention. Instead of repeating the same pattern, I started to vary. Some more compact spaces with a single bed for those traveling alone, others designed for couples with larger beds. This made the guest flow much more natural and efficient. The most interesting part is that this impacts occupancy and profit directly. When the hotel is aligned with the profiles of those arriving, there are almost no empty rooms due to incompatibility. It's a simple adjustment, but it gives you that feeling of total control over the hotel's operations.
One thing that took me a while to understand was how to deal with the most demanding guests, the famous brats. At first, I thought it was just a matter of gradually improving the hotel and they would appear naturally. But it doesn't work like that. This type of client simply ignores your hotel if you haven't reached a very specific standard. They only start considering your hotel once you're at least 4 stars, and even then, it's no guarantee. In addition to reputation, they demand certain luxury facilities, especially a bar. And here comes an important detail. It's not enough to have the basics working. They want an experience. Things like a dance floor or even a golf simulator make a big difference in attracting this audience. The mistake I made was trying to level up the hotel counting on the arrival of these guests, when in practice, you need to prepare beforehand. It's almost like an advance investment. You set up the entertainment structure first, ensure the bar is well positioned and functional, and only then start targeting this more demanding public. If you do it the other way around, you get stuck waiting for guests who will never show up. When you get this right, the impact is quite clear. These guests help raise the overall level of the hotel and bring more return, but only if you actually meet their expectations. So, in practice, the tip is simple. Don't try to please brats too early. Prepare the ground, secure the 4 stars, and set up at least a decent entertainment hub before expecting them to knock on your door. One thing that seems simple, but that can totally mess up your hotel, is not paying attention to the basic details of the rooms. I have made the mistake of setting up several rooms thinking everything was fine, only to realize later that they weren't even working properly. The game requires some essential items, and if any of them are missing, the room simply doesn't fulfill its purpose. Every room needs the basics clearly defined: bed, wardrobe, and luggage rack. It might seem obvious, but in the rush of expanding the hotel, it's very easy to forget one of these items or place them wrong. And then you're left wondering why the rating isn't going up or why guests aren't as satisfied as they should be. Now, when you start aiming for more sophisticated rooms, the requirement goes up quite a bit. It's not enough to just meet the basics and expect 5 stars. If the idea is to work with suites or more premium areas, you need to invest in real comfort. TV, minibar, bathtub, these elements make all the difference in the guest's perception and the final level of the room. Once you start treating each room as an important piece of the whole, the game changes. Instead of just building any which way, you start planning each space better, thinking about the standard you want to reach. And this reflects directly on the hotel's reputation, because at the end of the day, these small details are what define whether you'll get stuck at 3 stars or finally reach that higher level.